Yes. It is live there.
Okay, Anthony, can you check if we're all live? All good to go? Yeah.
Let me check.
Okay, we're good. Assalamu alaikum. And welcome all to our first session of Fintech Flares, which is an online webinar that we are starting at Fintech Galaxy to bring the community together. And for our first session, we have a very, very interesting, famous, well-loved, and very successful guest. Before I introduce my guest today, it's very important to shed light on today's session and highlight the importance of having leaders talking about the current crisis and what is actually happening. A few days ago, the head of the International Monetary Fund, Cristina Georgieva, last week warned more than 170 countries will suffer falling standards of living. All this is happening this year as a result of the worst global economic crisis since the 1930s. She said, today we are confronted with a crisis like no other. In fact, we anticipate the worst economic fallout since the Great Depression. Now, the fears are growing that the downturn could be far more punishing and long-lasting than initially feared. Remember, this is not a financial crisis. This is a human, this is a health, and this is economic crisis. And it could potentially endure into next year and even beyond as governments intensify restrictions on business to hold the spread of the pandemic. Now, some economists say that the 2008 financial crisis, which most of us have seen, feels like a dry run for this crisis we're living in today. This is already shaping up as the deepest dive on record for the global economy for over 100 years. The dramatic spread of the COVID-19 has disrupted lives, livelihoods, communities, and businesses worldwide. Now, on this call, we have bankers, we have startups, we have entrepreneurs, we have economists, and people who are interested to know what is the impact of this crisis on the financial market, on the banks, and how are leaders actually dealing with all this disruption in the economy. Obviously, thanks to technology, it's not preventing us from getting connected. So we're all today here connected from different parts of the world. The high likelihood of a potential revenue disruption will lead obviously to a potential liquidity crisis for many businesses. And this could mean that the recovery may not be a quick bounce back. So before I start with introducing my guest, I want to have a poll with our attendees today. Are the capital and liquidity buffers built by banks sufficient to see them through the most dramatic economic crash in history? Let's start with the poll. and I'm going to launch it now. Please, all of you, if you can see the poll on the screen. Can you see the poll on the screen? Very good. Yes, no, nobody knows. Okay, any more votes? Okay, so we've received 84% votes so far. The biggest number goes to nobody knows. We don't know if the liquidity and capital buffers built by banks is sufficient to see them through the dramatic economic crash in history. Okay, you can see the results. You can see the results on the screen. 49% nobody knows, and the rest is split between yes and no. Our guest today is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Baraka Banking Group, Mr. Adnan Yousif, who has led Baraka Banking Group since its inception, developing the group into one of the largest and most diversified Islamic banking groups in the world. He's also the chairman of Bahrain Association of Banks. Bahrain-based Baraka is listed on both Bahrain Bourse and the Nasdaq Dubai. It is present in 17 countries across the world with more than 700 branches in countries like Jordan, Egypt, Tunis, Bahrain, obviously Sudan, Turkey, South Africa, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and Germany. سيد عدنان، السلام عليكم، يعطيك العافية.
عليكم السلام والرحمة.
أول شيء نحن كثير مبسوطين إنك أنت ضيفنا اليوم. أنا عم رحب فيك بالعربي بس I will switch into English in a bit so that all the attendees can actually listen and understand the conversation and participate with us.
Very good.
Let's start with the first question, which we just gave everybody. Do you think banks are ready to deal with the dramatic economic crash that is happening today, given the capital and liquidity buffers that you've built over the years?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, for having this opportunity to talk to you and to my colleagues through this facility. Really, first of all, when we want to ask this question, we have to say also for how long. If we are talking about 3 to 6 months, no, banks can live with their own liquidities and they can stand behind their customers. But if the things stay for longer than that, then there is another kind of action to be taken by the government and also by the banks. But as you know very well, 6 years ago, I did confirm to everybody that we are going to have a crisis in 2020. And I say that it will be in China. And also last year at the World Bank building during the IMF, I attend a workshop arranged by Union Arab Banks. And I did mention at that time that Europe is in recession. I used the word recessions. And people were a little bit surprised because things was going okay. I said it is not. The things which we are right now suffering, the financial crisis was coming. It just happened that we have the virus, join us in the financial crisis. Otherwise, China will have problems, America will have problems, Europe will have problems. The the financial crisis has already started end of 2019. Anyhow, this is my own personal kind of feeling. I think that as far as the capital adequacies, as far as the liquidity in the banking, if we stay within 3 to 6 months, I think that banks can overcome this issue. But now we have to know what we are going to face. As you know that most of the factories, most of the business still has not been open. For how long, I don't know. Today I was watching the TV and there was a study on this issue, and certain countries, they have their own dates. Some of the countries they mention, like UK, they say it is by September. America, well, the president has already announced that, you know, we don't know, maybe it will be May, maybe it will be after May. So therefore, if we are talking about a longer period, then we are going to have problems. Furthermore, the Europe is now in recession, and to turn it around, they need between 3 to 4 years. They cannot overcome this problem with just injecting money in the companies. When the United States and the president of the country say that the Boeing, we will pump $50 billion in that big company, well, that is okay, but that will not solve their issues, because Boeing can produce airplanes, but if the airplanes has not get a quotation from a buyers, then the production will be just for them. They will produce the airplanes, but nobody will buy it. The same thing applied to the Chinese products. If the product is ready, but nobody is buying it, then you go through the cycles. The same thing applied to the oil. If oil is not bought by the Chinese and by the Indian and by the other Asian countries, then also we are going through the same cycle. Overall, I'm always optimistic. I believe that we can work and solve this issue, but it needs really a kind of a good thinking. When we have the crisis in 2008, you remember it, Myrna, I did mention to you when you done an interview for me, and I say that what they did in 2008 was not a real correction. It was partially. They correct certain things, they inject monies, they do this, they open the doors. But I think that now they have to go deep to find where is the problem is coming. Because now we have every 10 years, we have a crisis. 2008, we have crisis. When we start 2000, we have a crisis. 1990, we have a crisis. 1980, we have a crisis, Latin America's. 1970s, when the dollars, when the American, they decide not to support the dollar with they segregate the dollar and the gold. So always we go through cycles. So I think that this is the time now to sit and go deep and find what is the major problem to solve it and to correct it.
Okay, so you're saying that the crisis started before the coronavirus spread into Mexico?
Oh yes, yeah. Corona was just, something which, speed the problems or speed the crisis. Otherwise, the crisis was there.
What's the underlying reason for such a crisis every 10 years?
Every 10 years, because nobody correct the situation. In 2008, America, they correct their problems and they inject money in companies and in the economy. That is good, but that does not encourage people to invest, does not encourage people to come with the new ideas. So I think that we have to try and find the problems and go deep and check. Because what's happened, when you go from 2008 till now, debt has been increased. Interest rate, when you reduce it, people, they think that it will encourage companies to do business. That is yes, but most of the companies, what they did, they add debts over the debts they have already. Now they have a big amount of debts and they don't know how to solve it, although that the interest rate is close to zero. It is a matter of sitting and going through it. You know, Basel came with a lot of things, which some of them, they are very good, but some of them, they are holding banks from lending. When you have a capital adequacy, 12% or 12.5% or 10%, then there is no flexibility. When you have IFRS 9, where you put condition on provisions on good loans, not bad loans also, then this, you know, put the banks in a very difficult situation to grow. And you have on the top of it compliance issues, a lot of regulation is coming in, and the banks, rather than they focus on business, they focus on administrations. So really, I mean, they need to look to it. The problem is not that difficult, but it needs a kind of a leaders. Big countries has to sit and say that, where is our mistake? I'll tell you also now what they will do. Many people, they don't want to put new capital in companies. What they will do, they will come with a lot of derivatives issues, high risk business, and after maybe 5 or 10 years, we will end with the same crisis for this new product. My suggestion, my recommendation, I went through these cycles since 40 years now. I learned from in the 70s. At that time, interest rate was 18, 19% on dollar. And inflation was very high. Unemployment in America was very high, as well as in Europe. Then in the 80s, I went through the crisis of Latin America's, then Asian crisis. Then we have the invasion of Kuwait, then BCCI, which has a complication over it, then the derivatives issues, then again the Asian crisis, and every 5-10 years we have these problems. But I never had this kind of problem this year, because with the financial, we have people, they don't go to their job. This is really, I mean, factories are closed.
لازم يروح فوق عشان يبه.
Okay.
Now we understood the crisis and we understood kind of the reasons behind it, and now it's very important for us to actually get to the mindset of leaders. How are banks and bankers and leaders and regulators dealing with this? Before I ask you this question, I'm going to ask the participants again. Just a note for everyone, I've got you all muted, and I'm going to unmute you when we start the Q&A. So for this one, let's launch the second poll. How are banking leaders dealing with the COVID-19 crisis? So you heard Mr. Adnan talking about the crisis, about his definition of the crisis. It's very important to learn from leaders and look at how leaders are actually dealing with the crisis. Are they playing defense, you know, cutting costs, retrenching from markets, closing down branches, or they are playing offense and going digital, new opportunities? You all know that the biggest companies in the world are today have actually been launched after the 2008 crisis, Uber, Airbnb, and all of those. So is it business as usual? Is it playing offense? Is it playing defense? 30 more seconds on the poll, please. Let me know what you think. And let's see if Mr. Adnan agrees with your views.
I have already responded also, by the way. I participate.
Okay, so 35% say that they have actually, they believe that banks play offense. However, 51% believe that banks play defense. Okay, so from in your experience, after dealing with, you're into the banking sector for more than 40 years, you've seen so many, crisis after crisis. How do banks deal with the current crisis? And as a leader of an institution that spans across 17 markets, what is Al-Baraka doing today?
Well, I mean, we did a few things. First of all, normally, that we have in our budget when we do our budget or when we prepare our budget. Sorry.
Abdullah Muayyad, he keeps unmuting himself and speaking.
Okay.
Too much technology.
Okay. When we prepare our budget for the past 10 years, normally we don't allow the units to start spending until June. Why we choose June, July? Because by that time, at least we know what will happen to us in the beginning of the year. If the year started with a very good result, the first quarter, then we give the green light to say to the units, okay, you can open branches, you can buy new IT, you expand here, you charge this kind of expense. So we give them the green light. Now, when we have this 2020, we have already asked all the units, say that, you cannot spend anything until we give you the green light, because we feel that, the year will not be an easy. So therefore, they have that kind of instructions. Furthermore, I am always a person which does not go straight very aggressively on closing branches, cutting expense here or there, because always there is a cost over it. When you close branches, you might say, okay, I'm reducing it for the coming years, but the cost will be incurred now in your 2020. So therefore, you will incur a lot of expense, which was not done or it was not assumed in your budgets. And therefore that you will have difficulties in meeting your income for 2020. For what we did or what we are doing is we are taking things gradually. As I say that, we have this kind of standards that nobody within the units can spend any new money from January till June. After the result of the first 6 months, then the units are allowed to start spending subject to that the year was a good year for us. As I mentioned to you, Myrna, that it is a very difficult situation right now, and I know that banks are facing problems, but my concern always in this kind of crisis is one, which is liquidity. When you have liquidity, you can manage all the issues. But when you are suffering from the liquidity, then you might have problems. And I remember once you told me, or you asked me this question before, that Al-Baraka has a very high liquidity. It's about 30 to 35%. And I say yes, because we like to be always very liquid. Maybe this reduce our income, but normally we don't know in this part of the world what will happen. So therefore you have to have a very high liquidity to enable you to meet the requirement, the difficulties, the slow in business, the slow in deposit. So what I'm saying is, what I'm recommending also is people has to make sure that they have a good liquidity to meet their needs for the coming 2 months. After that, if they are able to meet their liquidity, then business will come. I am a positive that factories, they will start again. We will see a lot of products coming to the markets because factories has been stopped or has been kept on hold for 2 or 3 months, especially in China. And I'm sure now the Chinese, first of all, they want to export and also they want to store, because what's happened is most of their products was sold on the goods which they have already stored in their own storage. So I think that the coming month will be very active, subject that leaders are sitting to solve this issue and they go deep to find what is the problem and why we have these problems.
when you say we keep liquidity on the side, which I remember when I was a journalist, we used to call it in the back pocket. Keep some money in the back pocket. For how many quarters do you put money on the side?
I'll tell you something. I'm not now. I'm very open on these issues. You know that the liquidity I lifted in the central banks in the countries which I am operating in is about over 3 billion, 3.5. And by the way, I don't get any return because I cannot recognize this income in my profit. You know how much I lost? I lost nearly $300 million, i.e. that means for the past 10 years, every year I'm losing 30 million. But I felt that banks does not go under the water because of bad loans. Banks, they go under the water because of the liquidity. If you have the liquidity, you can survive. If you have no liquidity, you cannot survive. Especially we are private banks. We are not banks owned by the government. If I have any problem, I go and say to my parent, please, give me money. No, they will never give me the money. Because they have, sorry?
It applies to people, individuals, to SMEs. Those who have cash on the side will survive few quarters going forward.
Oh yes. Banks and companies are the same.
Let me ask you now. I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to say yes or no. Okay? So are you? Before the yes or no, let me ask you: are you playing offense or defense?
No, I'm playing both. I would say.
Both. Okay. Type. Do you have freezing on hiring?
I have not frozen. People who in the units, they have the flexibility. As I say that everything, I took a very strategic decision 20 years ago when I joined Al-Baraka that our budget worked like this. You cannot hire, you cannot open, you cannot order before July in every year. That means the first 6 months, you are supposed to do your own business without any expansion, unless it is committed in the previous year. For example, if a branch, you have agreed that you will open it last year, but there was a delay in it and it was open in March, that is a normal. But no new initiatives approved unless we see the result or the first 6 month result. So therefore, Alhamdulillah, we don't have any new staff unless it is a replacement. If it is a replacement, that is okay. But if it is a new staff, no, we keep it after June.
Okay. I'm gonna open up the floor now for the startups to participate with us. Let me look who is with us here. وائل خطار. هلا وائل، كيفك؟ تسمعني؟ لا نحن عم نسمع، نحن ما عم نسمعك بس.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
That's good. Now it's
yes,
good.
How are you? How are you, Mina? Hello, Mr. Adnan.
أهلا.
من بيروت. Please عرف عن حالك quickly وأستاذ عدنان معك to answer your question.
Yes, I'm Wa'il Khattar. I'm the co-founder of Anacron Technologies. We provide robot advisory services for banks and financial institutions. My question for you is, how can banks support SMEs? And what's your advice for fintechs to provide a successful partnership with banks? Maybe a change in the business model in this current situation where you're not investing in new products. Maybe revenue sharing is the thing you're looking at. Basically, that's my question.
Thank you, Wa'il.
Well, I think that we have not changed our strategy on the fintech. Mernesh, we are very committed on these things. And we are now thinking seriously to just going through the digital banking, as a matter of fact, in other countries, because we felt that our new product, which we done it in Germany through Al-Baraka Turkey, has shown a very good result. And we are now duplicating, or we are using the same concept in other European countries. So therefore that the fintech we are supporting, SMEs, we have not stopped them. I mean, in Bahrain, we are doing the same. In Egypt, we are doing the same. In Turkey, we are doing the same. We have not stopped anything. What we did is we slow lending activities in all our group just to see what will happen. But we never stop the business. Business is normal. We get a lot of application from all our units. And as I say that we are supporting the fintech. We have not done a kind of very aggressive, the reverse action to be taken. No, we kept everything because as I say that, and as I mentioned to you, when we take a decision, strategic decision, we don't change our mind just like this. No, we have to make sure that we are taking the right decision. I'll tell you something. We just finished in March this year, we complete the change of our core banking system in 4 units. And we are using both system, IML. We apply it in South Africa, in Egypt, in Bahrain, in Lebanon. And the rest of the units, they are using the same system, which is Algeria, Morocco, Pakistan, and now we are, and Syria. Now we are also thinking for Jordan as well. So we are going with our own business. As I say that we have not stopped anything. We slow a little bit, especially on the corporate. Big tickets, well, normally we don't do big tickets transaction, but the big borrowers, we don't, provide them with big facilities. We give them the normal facilities, which is for their own business. But otherwise, we slow a little bit the lending activities.
It says, Adnan, when you talk about how banks can survive if they have liquidity over quarters, startups don't actually have this this luxury, and the banks during these times, let's face it, they don't lend to SMEs. They don't. I mean, out of the whole crisis, the SMEs are the biggest losers and the most affected. Even though, if you look at the hiring and the the job market, the biggest employers are SMEs. So, what can banks do more during this crisis to help the SMEs? Because at the end of the day, doing nothing doesn't help us.
No, SMEs. There are certain countries. When I do SMEs in Bahrain, for example, I get the benefit, first of all, that 50% of the SMEs is guaranteed by Tamkeen, which is more or less like a government. Okay, number one. Number two, I have also the support of the capital allocations, which is also support me. These things applied in different countries whereby certain SMEs or certain lending to the SMEs is covered by one of the government's entities. So this gives you a very good flexibility. I don't think that we should focus on the SMEs. SMEs, maybe they are doing okay with the banks. The big problem is the big companies. The big companies or the multinations companies which they have outside the business, this is the big issues for them. And in which sector these big companies are operating. If it is in the tourist, they have problems. If it is in the construction, they have problems. But if it is in the foods, producing foods and other, no, they are doing very good because people are sitting at home and they eat. And the things is very good for them.
Okay, thank you. We have another question here from, let me see, Khalil Alami. Khalil, I'm trying to, okay. Khalil, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Khalil, please introduce yourself and ask the question.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum. Ya'atikum al-afiyah. And I hope you're ready to take. My name is Khalil Alami and I'm the founder and CEO of Teller, the award-winning online payment gateway in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. We work in the GCC, enabling online payment gateways for mobile apps, websites, and merchants. Ustad Adnan, I wanted to ask you about, from your role as a lead banker and the head of the Bahrain Association of Banks. It seems to me that right now, during this crisis, the banks are playing more defensive than offensive. I would like to ask about Bahrain and what kind of innovation they are supporting the fintech community with in terms of maybe regulations or open banking, especially in this day and age where most of the businesses have moved to working from home, and most of the entrepreneurs might not have actually a registered company, while they are not being able to accept payments online in order to actually make that economic cycle flow. So what kind of support is is Bahrain offering this kind of situation? Thank you.
Well, I think that Bahrain has already put a package of about $1.7 billion to support the economy, and also that they were one of the first central banks in this part of the world, which they announced that they give a grace period of 6 months. That means there is no installment to be paid for companies, whether companies are big or small or SMEs, for the coming 6 months. This will give, will ease little bit the cash flow of the SMEs and the corporate, because when you have a slow business, the first thing is you are facing with is the payment of your installments. So I think this is what Bahrain did. I have to tell you frankly that banks for the past now 2 months, they are just trying to find ways to solve the issues of their existing customer right now for their needs. Because as I mentioned to you, that when the government or when the central bank give instruction to the banking sector, saying that, number one, okay, you reschedule the installment becoming for the 6 months, number one, no interest to be charged, no penalties to be charged, no fees to be charged. As if that means if you are giving just extension of 6 months for nothing. But this also put a lot of pressure of the liquidity on the banking sector, because banks, they were anticipating that these companies or these individuals, they pay their installment, they take the cash, and they reinvest it in other. But when you have the same existing customers does not pay to you, then this is which slow the banking. They have to say, oh, we have to look for our liquidity. And that's why many banks right now, they are very slow on lending because of the 6 month extension. They have to do the calculation, how much it is going to be impact on our liquidation. But as far as the rest, as I mentioned to you, the fintech products, the fintech approach, I think the banking has never touched that one. I mean, today I have signed something for Ahmed on this issue. So I don't think that banks are slowing. Maybe they are slowing on this issue, but they have not stopped it.
Yes, that's I agree with you. But the issue that I saw that resulted from the stimulus, we saw a lot of central banks giving out the stimulus for SMEs, interest-free lending, deferral of payments, and all of that in order for the SMEs to manage their cash flow, and that's fantastic. But the issue here is those SMEs today are those SMEs that are offline are completely offline, sitting at home with no operation whatsoever. So there's no revenue really here. So if they wanted to actually go ahead and find entrepreneurs in order to pump in some cash and make that cycle grow, these entrepreneurs have no companies to start with. They're not even lending from the banks. How are we going to enable them to take actual payments as a person and not as a business in order to continue that cycle of economy? This is
I
what
think that I understand what you are saying. I don't know whether you know that in Al-Baraka Turk, we have what we call it the garage. And the garage is an area or a center built by our Turkish subsidiary. And now we are copying the same in all our units. what the garage they do is these people who are the entrepreneur, okay, we provide them with all the facilities in our building, and we are tracing them. If they are very good and they have what we call it potential, we participate with them in the equity, in the capital, as well as we are providing them with the financing. The financing also, we provide it to them with a very small cost. So this will encourage the companies to generate a good profit to enable them to reinvest it in their project. So I think that this is an idea which should be also applied in all the banking sector, because the entrepreneur is like the engine. You have to keep the engine on, and we should not sit and take a negative approach. We have to be always a positive. You know that, I'll tell you something. I was having an interview yesterday, and people are very negative. They say, well, we will see the world different from the rest, not like before. And I say, God, why you are that negative? 70 years, we have the second war. We lost 45 million people in the war. And after 1 or 2 years, business went back to the normal. Now here we don't have, I don't know how many now, 500,000? 1.8 has the affected, but how many people died? 100,000. Just, 100,000, it's nothing. And when you take,
I think the trick is the experience. نحن بالentrepreneurial world كلنا mid-20s, early 30s صح خليل؟ فما عندنا كثير خبرة dealing with crime.
I am 20 years old also like you.
على كل حال معنا جودة أبو حسين. جودة هاي جودة.
أهلا how are you?
I'm
hello everyone.
Okay. Connecting هلا.
Okay, I want to introduce myself. I'm Jawdat Abu Hussein. I'm the CEO and the founder of a lending platform, Trade Hub Joe. We are making a platform to a lending the SMEs. I want to ask, the traditional way in the banks need to be the person in a physics way to be in the branch to sign, or also to have to meet the employee of the banks. Okay, our fintech encourage us to digitize every transaction in the bank. The banks want to deposit and credit the person, so it's the main transaction for the banks. The regulator now, it's not support to e-signature or digital onboarding. Also, the banks need the customer to come to the branch to sign. Is the crisis support that we can make every transaction is digitized in this crisis, because we are aimed to change the traditional way of working between the banks and the merchant and the person. What do you think about the next stage? The banks will support that or not?
Well, I think that if you have a good setup, I think that the banks will support you. These small companies, small SMEs, unfortunately, the banks, they were not able to understand it in the beginning. That's why I say that we create garage within our subsidiary in Turkey, and we put people from the same field, which is people coming from the IT, from new business, and we put them inside this division. We never brought bankers, because we know that the bankers, first of all, they are scared from these small companies. Therefore, we let entrepreneur people to run our garage, because they have been through that process and they know what is the difficulties. Because the entrepreneur, he's also scared. The banks are scared, and therefore business does not operate. But when you bring to that garage or to that division somebody from the same field, which is the entrepreneur who went and did a very good job, okay, people, they will duplicate what he did. So therefore that you have to be patient. You have to work with the banks. And I'm sure that there are banks which they support. I am always, who know me very well, I always support the small companies, because the small companies produce or add value to the economy better than big companies. Big companies, they look always after how they control their expense. And their expansion is a little bit slow. Whereby small companies, when they do the good job, you will find them, they go very fast in their business.
Thank you. جادت معنا وائل زكي. وائل, can I see you?
Well, I would love to, but you call me, I was surprised, so I will be just talking if you don't mind. Dr. Adnan, it's good to see you. I had the pleasure of meeting you in the staff meeting in my keynote back a few months ago.
Well, introduce yourself, please.
Dr. Adnan, I'm pretty much of an advocate for the remote working gig economy. I've got 20 plus years of experience in the field of human capital, criminology, etc. But aside from that, I'm a big fan of startups and supporting innovation and entrepreneurship at all levels. The one thing I believe, and I would like to take your views on it, Dr. Adnan, that this is the time when we need to focus more on innovation and not to slow down, because I see it as the future will not look the same. I see it that we're heading towards a different way of doing businesses, heading towards a different way of interacting and connecting from a local as well as a global perspective. So I believe personally that innovation will play a big role in transforming organizations in the financial sector and any other industries as well. So what's your, takeaway for us on that?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, on several occasions, that your business is the potential for the future. What you are doing is the right things, and what we are going to do as banks is we are going to support your business, because I am a great believer that things does not go for many years on the same, and we are not like a factory, like machines. No, I think every time we have to go and put new ideas in the system. Believe it or not, yesterday I was looking to my kids. This is the first time I order food at home. I never order food. Normally we cook at home. I'm sure that this is applied to many families in the Gulf. Now, this kind of things, how I can order from my home through my telephones, from the restaurants, certain things I want, certain things I needed from the supermarket, certain things I needed from pharmacies. Who can do this and put all together in a system is you. Therefore, that you is the future. You are going to be the future for all banking, for people, for companies. So we should look after that, and we should not just get depressed because if something happened, we leave everything and we run. No. We should always support our ideas, and I believe that you are, you have a lot of potential in the coming days.
Thank you. Mark, I'm trying to unmute you. Can you? Okay, very good.
Yes, hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Greetings from Riyadh during the lockdown. Haven't been able to get home to Bahrain because they closed the causeway.
We told you that come to Bahrain.
We are indeed in Bahrain. I'm the founder of Siula. We're in regulatory sandbox with the CBB, in the crypto space. It's a pleasure to join you today in this call. I'm really excited about your comments and some of the ideas you're sharing with us. I had a question with regard to not necessarily just digital banking, but how do you see COVID-19 really as a stimulus, like accelerating the urgency towards cashless society, cashless payments, contactless payments. I'm really interested in how you see the virus as the spark to launch these agendas to effectively to help stop the spread of reliance on banknotes to stop the spread of the virus, but to tackle that liquidity problem that that you mentioned?
Thank you.
Well, if you are talking about, you know, the cash, the physical cash, I think that in the coming 10 years, yani, you will see a very small percentage of the cash going through the circulations. Banks has been encouraged, people has been encouraged to use their own telephones for transferring or for paying their services and their expense. I think that now in most of the Gulf countries, yani I can see it. I mean, while I'm going through the supermarkets, people also, they don't pay by card. They pay just by putting their telephone, and then that's it. This is a new thing which they never know about it. Or we never, yani we have not seen it before. This is the coming for the future. I believe that transfer of monies within the banks, the IT people, the fintech companies, they did a very good and very great jobs in easing the payments within the countries. Maybe in the future also, we are not going through the clearing of the banks. We will just do directly payments. So therefore, also clearing banks, they will stop from dealing. We have also, you remember that clearing checks in the old days, we used to go to the central bank, we present our checks, and other banks, they present their check drawn on us, and we exchange the checks. Now that is gone. We do it electronic. So therefore, a lot of things has been, you know, pushed aside. I believe that maybe within 1 or 2 years, yani hardly you will find people carrying notes with them. Everything they will pay by card. It is coming, yani it is very smoothly is coming to the end. The notes, the money transfer and everything, we will see it in a different way. I remember, Myrna, last year, the governor, His Excellency, the governor of the Central Bank of Bahrain, he said that I handle the normal Basel issues and everything, I handle it to Khalid Ahmed because at the Central Bank, because this is his job. Me as a governor, I'm heading through how I can do new regulation for the new system coming up, which is the fintechs, which is the transfer, the electronic transfer, and all these things. I.e., that means he has a vision that he don't want to be involved in the normal administration. He wants to be involved in how he can improve their situation for the coming years.
That's right. This is actually a very good segue for us to the final question for this session. Unfortunately, we're already touching an hour with you, Mr. Adnan, and I bet you that if we spend the whole day talking to you, it won't be enough. The chat room is buzzing with conversations, and unfortunately, I just can't ask all the questions. I'm going to run the last poll now, which is the most important subject probably for all of us today. And it's all about the role of fintechs, the role of startups in the coming period, in the future of banking. And as you all know, most of our viewers and listeners today on Facebook, they're all the millennials. They don't like the way we do banking today. And whatever the banks are digitizing or transforming, they have to actually provide the right services to these people. Let me launch this poll. Do you think fintech can play a transformative role during and post-crisis? And obviously, my wrap-up question would be, what are the initiatives that Al-Baraka is coming up with to collaborate more with fintechs and support them in the coming period, and as well to benefit from the innovation that comes from outside the box.
Okay. I think that, as I say that, you know,
the answer is clear. Everybody is saying yes. Let me share the results.
I say yes also.
Okay, so Now, let me, okay, so my follow-up question with you, and it's the wrap-up question, the final question. What role do you think fintechs will play going forward, and what are the opportunities to collaborate with Baraka Banking Group?
Well, you know, we are open on this, and I remember that I did mention it to you several times. And what you have is something which is unique. You should not get, you know, disappointed because of the situation right now. I believe that banks, it will take them maybe April 1st, maybe the first half of May to settle. Once they settle, they want to do business. They will go back to the normal. So I think that the fintech is one of the things which many institutions, they put it on their agenda. And you as individuals, which you are putting these ideas, you should always push it, support it, and let us have, again, you should not just sleep on these issues. Please present it again. Put it in the news. Let us see it on the TV, CNBC, CNN, العربية. People, they talk about the fintech, about the future of the fintech, as if, you know, we close our doors and we stop. No, I want you, all of you, to make sure that you are doing the same business. Believe it or not, we went through too many crises. We should not just, you know, stop of thinking, stop of planning, stop of putting new ideas. Life will continue. It will never stop. I can tell you that, you know, I've been to the worst time I have during my time, this 40 years, was the first 3 years, 81, 82, 83, 84. That is in the Latin America, I remember. That was a disaster for the whole world, okay? And we went through a lot of problems, and I told you that interest rate was 18, 19%. So if I have a cash, there is no need for me to go through fintech or nothing. Just I put the cash and have a return of 18%. Very high, but you have also inflation, very high also. But we should continue with our plans. We should not stop. I'm telling you, believe it or not, that you have gold in your hand. Therefore, you have to protect it and you have to push it. I think that banks will clear, they will have a good thinking after the mid of May, because at least, you know, that they have already settled with all the problem they have. And I think that they will continue, especially that there are countries, they are standing behind. And when President Trump talked about 2 trillion, Emirates, yesterday, they declare about 256 billion dirham. It's not a small amount. This is a big amount. Saudi Arabia, talking about a huge amount, the same. Really, I mean, we should plan that, oh, we have problems, but how we can correct it, how we can see the other side of the coin. We should not, you know, just sit and say, oh, sorry, khalas, everything is finished. No, no, no. I'm always optimistic. You know me very well, Myrna. I'm always optimistic and always looking for the future is better than today.
Of course, Nahna, we actually hosted you as our first guest at the FinTech Fairs because we know the mentality and you know that we know that on the ground you are the biggest supporter of fintechs and innovation. I'm reading here a lot of questions related to, I mean, see, at the end of the day, banks think differently than the fintechs and the entrepreneurs. And for the entrepreneurs and for the fintechs, it's very, very wild out there, understanding how banks operate, understanding the procurement cycle of banks, understanding regulations, navigating between the different ecosystems. One thing I have to say to everyone who's listening to us and who's with us on the chat today and on the Facebook, we are, as Fintech Galaxy, we're launching in a few weeks, inshallah, we're launching our open innovation platform and fintech marketplace where banks and fintechs can meet virtually, they can collaborate, the fintechs can showcase their products and solutions to the banks online, and banks can just go and search for the solutions that they want based on certain reviews and ratings and product descriptions. So I think it's our role as an ecosystem partner to bring everybody together. And there's another surprise as well. We're actually launching a regulatory chatbot, because understanding regulations and dealing with them is a very complex phenomenon for everyone. So we're right now feeding the bot all the regulatory information about Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and all other countries. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll be launching this very soon. And I know that Al-Baraka will be our first partner and supporter.
Hello, Sahla. And you know that Al-Baraka, you know, the people in Al-Baraka also, you work with us on several occasions, and we are ready to support you. Not just you as Merna, but everybody who has already joined you through our subsidiaries located in different countries. We will be more than pleased to support you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for everyone. Have a good day. I will share the video with Mr. Adnan again, and hopefully all the chats, we will consolidate them and email them. So maybe we can have some email conversations. And I'm sure Ahmed al-Balushi and his team will be able to take this forward with the fintech separately.
Thank you very much.
يعطيكم العافية والسلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام. خلصنا؟